Now, Anika Wells is trying to defend her exorbitant expenses, which she has now submitted to be audited. Well, Senator James Paterson today suggested that she should now stand aside while this is being investigated.
I don't think it's sufficient that it's been referred to IPIA only for an independent investigation. I think there's a chance the Ministerial Code of Conduct has also been breached. It should be referred to the Secretary of PM&C to investigate, and Minister Wells should stand aside while that investigation takes place, as is standard practice.
But Anika Wells and the Prime Minister are just hoping this will blow over, and they keep insisting she's done nothing wrong.
I am the steward of a world-leading social media empire that has incredible cultural and generational change unfurling as of today. I'm also the Communications Minister who needs to make sure that taxpayers have confidence in the 000 system, particularly across the summer.
No. Sports Minister goes to sporting event. Guess what?
But is it normal to leave a car waiting for 10 hours?
Oh, who knows what happened there?
Yeah, and what about the Oasis concert where taxpayers paid for her husband to attend? That's not normal for a sports minister. Well, to discuss, let's bring in now Victorian Liberal Party President Michael Kroger and IPA Senior Fellow Chief Economist Adam Creighton. Great to see you both. Michael, what's your reaction to this? Do you think the laws need to be changed if a minister like Anika Wells can just get away with this?
Look, of course they do, and I think the first political party which says this sort of wholesale rorting of the public purse has to be stopped and proper guidelines need to be put in place, the first party that does that will win huge community support. I mean, people are outraged. I mean, Albo's saying, oh, he doesn't know what happened with the Comcar. Who keeps a car waiting for 7 hours for $1,000? Would you do it if it was your money, Anika? No, of course you wouldn't. The restaurant in Paris at the public's expense, and on it goes. I mean, how do people like her turn up for work each day with a straight face and not be humiliated and embarrassed that they've plundered the public purse to the extent she has and has no shame whatsoever? I mean, any normal person, any normal middle-class person would have simply said, I'm sorry, I stuffed up, I'm going to resign.
Or at least offer to pay it back. But Adam, she hasn't even done that.
Yeah, well, look, she's digged in, and I'm not really surprised. I mean, my view on here is slightly different. I think the rules are far too generous. I agree with Michael; they should be changed. But the reality is, both sides do this. I mean, we had the Bronwyn Bishop helicopter, we had Susan Ley. Both sides have done this for years, and I just think there's so much hypocrisy on both sides with these sorts of scandals. I understand why it's a political story. I understand why the media loves it. But we've spent a week talking about this, and we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. This is small beer in a budget of $752 billion. And I just think, sure, this is wasteful, but the whole edifice of Canberra is extremely wasteful. I mean, the ministers
Adam,
all have 22 personal staff. They have...
Sorry to interrupt, but if you put every politician's, if you put them all together, the expenses of the hundreds of politicians, that will be a decent sized money, especially the international travel for the Albanese government ministers. And the difference with Bronwyn Bishop and Susan Ley is that they actually had to resign and pay back the money. We're not seeing this accountability from Albanese.
No, look, that is true, and that is an interesting point. But I also would say that the opposition, the coalition, have been relatively reticent in their attacks, I would say, on the minister, because they're all worried, I think, that journalists will scrutinise their travel because, let's face it, to start again, I'd be surprised if an MP could put their hand on their heart and say that they'd never booked travel for personal reasons and arranged work stuff around it, work meetings around it. It's fairly common, in my understanding, and it's part of the perks of the job. We might not like that, but that's the reality.
Well,
and it just, this story, as much, as fun as it is, it's distracting from the NDIS and tens of billions wasted on everything else.
You really have left journalism, Adam, if you think this is a distraction, that's for sure. But I want to turn to the Greens now, because they've actually had taxpayers pay to fly their family members to Palestinian protests and music festivals. This was in the Australian's front page today. And the Oz reports that the relatives of the Green senators Maureen Faruqi, Sarah Hanson-Young and David Shoebridge have all benefited from these taxpayer-funded perks. The Oz reports that Faruqi had taxpayers pay for a family member's return flights from Sydney to Melbourne in November 2023, where she attended a pro-Palestinian protest. And then the revelations this afternoon that Sarah Hanson-Young charged taxpayers $50,000 for her lobbyist husband to fly from Adelaide to Canberra, where he works for his own company as a lobbyist. Michael, what do you think? Are either of these examples appropriate?
Well, the Ben Oaquist one is quite serious because, as you say, he works as a lobbyist in Canberra. Apparently most of these 78 trips were during the sitting week. So as Cameron Miller's just said, I hope he was just sitting in his hotel room for the days that he was in Canberra. It'd be interesting to know when he arrived and when he left. He must have just been sitting in his room in the hotel because he certainly couldn't have been doing any lobbying work whilst he was there, because that would raise a whole series of questions about the use of these entitlements, because the taxpayer paid for his airfares. I mean, really? I mean, Sarah Hanson-Young, really? I mean, she needs to give a full explanation of this. That would, if he did any lobbying work, Sharri, whilst he was there, an unkind person might think that crosses the line between family reunion and something else.
No, it is disgusting. It actually makes you sick of the whole lot of politicians that, at least those who take the mickey like this out of the taxpayer. Let's turn now to the Australian energy market operator, AEMO. It's released a report today that you would have heard of by now on Sky News. In its report, it warns that coal will still be needed to secure the energy grid until 2049, 12 years longer than planned. And Adam, it also revised the cost of the net zero transition to $128 billion.
Well, this was just a fantasy document, really, of what the government would like to happen. And even in the fantasy document, what's extraordinary is coal is still required until 2049 by the experts. But you have states like Victoria who've actually legislated to close the Yallourn power station in just 3 years, in 2028, which is 16% roughly of the energy of the entire state, and also it supports South Australia as well. And then in 2035, Victoria has said that it's going to close down Loy Yang A, which I think is the second largest power station in the whole country. So you've never seen in the history of Australia such a big gap between economic and scientific reality and political rhetoric. Basically, this is not going to happen. I mean, that report said we had to have basically a doubling of solar and wind in the next 5 years. That's just not, physically possible. It's not going to happen. So basically, the government is going to end up with mud on its face. It's going to look extremely embarrassed, I think. And privately, I'm sure you know this, Sharri, talking to people, I think the government has gone way too far in on these emissions targets. They're not going to happen, and they're going to look really stupid.
Yeah, I think that's true. They can't possibly meet the 2030 or 2035 targets. Michael, Chris Bowen was, of course, asked about this report today, and he tried to put a positive spin on it. He was saying that Australian households are leading the charge with solar batteries and electric vehicles, but he ignores the substance of the report.
Well, he talks about Australian households as if they're, soldiers at the Russian front. I mean, you should feel good about your batteries and your solar panels and all that stuff. You're doing great things for the country. Sorry about the electricity bills that you can't possibly afford. I mean, look, let's be frank. This is a complete mess in this country. This whole change is a complete mess. Years ago, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, people thought, right, renewable energy is going to be the cheapest form of energy. It's clean. It's very low emissions. We're making a contribution to lowering the world's temperature. We're a great global citizen, and away we go. That's what people thought they were signing up for. Now what we've got is knowledge that there's no change to the world temperature. This is all symbolic. We're not making any difference whatsoever to what's happening in the world. It's costing a fortune to the average householder. Chris Bowen, one of the most unsuccessful ministers in the history of the Commonwealth, has been given a blank cheque of hundreds of billions of dollars to transform the energy sector. I mean, Sharri, haven't we been told for months that the coal-fired power stations have to close because they're at the end of life? The end of life, and therefore they have to close. And, of course, no board wants to put money into something because the wind is blowing against coal anyway, from a political point of view.
They're actually not at the end of life, by the way, Michael. Just to interject, they're not at the end of life.
But that's what we keep. But that's what we keep getting told, and we get the government involved. They get a bit more money wearing to keep it going for just a few more years. Who is going to pay, Sharri, for the next 20 years of band-aids for coal-fired power stations to stay open? We're subsidising them too?
I know, subsidising the continuing
Everything.
the life cycle of the coal-fired power station, subsidising the renewables. I mean, the private market should just be sorting this out without any government subsidies for electricity.
Correct.